Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett along with Kent Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and today we welcome back an old friend.
Well, old friend is right. We're going to have Jerry Pettibone join us on our show today. Jerry and I have been friends. We haven't stayed in close touch, but we have been friends for in excess of 50 years, and we're still telling those kinds of stories. They get better every decade that goes by. But Jerry has a real interesting organization he started called Sooners Helping Sooners. That's what we're going to talk about.
Long-time college football coach Jerry Pettibone, today's guest on The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
In the early 1800s, Davy Crockett of Middle Tennessee was a neighbor to the Chickasaw Nation. He was a frontiersman who saw the sovereignty of Indian nations as the very foundation of this country, and Crockett took his ideals to Congress. So when President Jackson's Indian Removal Act came up for a vote, Crockett spoke from the heart.
4 counties of my district border on the Chickasaw country. I know many of the Chickasaws, and nothing should ever induce me to vote to drive them west of the Mississippi.
Crockett voted his conscience, effectively ending his political career. Indian removal became law. Davy Crockett left for Texas, and we took our future to Indian Territory. Chickasaw history is American history in the world we share today.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
As I indicated in the open, we are really pleased today to have Jerry Pettibone, a longtime friend, and the president of Sooners Helping Sooners. He's going to talk about that organization. Jerry was a football player at the University of Oklahoma, did quite well there, well enough that Bud Wilkinson kept Jerry on after his playing days as an assistant coach. Jerry continued assistant coaching duties with Barry Switzer. He has assistant coaching stops in his coaching career at Nebraska, Texas A&M, and then he went to Northern Illinois University as head coach and set some school records there on wins for that institution. He then went from there to Oregon State University, where once again he had a good, strong coaching career. Since that time, he has been involved in, as an activity, helping parents and students who want to be involved in a recruiting process, understand what it's about and how to get involved in it. Jerry, sure good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I wish you would change. You haven't changed a bit.
You haven't either. You look good.
Great to have you here.
You bet.
You know, much of our audience is probably not going to remember that you played for Oklahoma in some of your earlier coaching days. Kind of give us a rundown on some of your early stops in your coaching career and your playing days.
I played for Bud Wilkinson 59, 60, and 61. And, of course, I wasn't part of the 47-game winning streak. I was after it. In fact, I played on the first OU team, that Bud Wilkinson team that lost a game 10 years. So I had to, anyway, I'm not real proud of that. But anyway, then I left OU, went into the Army, played service football in Korea, and had a really good experience, and then came back to OU when Jim McKenzie came to Oklahoma from Arkansas. And Coach McKenzie wanted a former Bud Wilkinson player to be like a graduate assistant student coach on his staff, and so I was able to do. I was actually in law school at the time. David Bourne and I were in the same law class, and my wife accuses me all the time I should have stayed in law school and not gone into coaching, but I did. I wanted to be a college football coach, so I coached for Jim McKenzie and then Chuck Fairbanks, and then I was Coach Switzer's recruiting coordinator for 7 years through 2 national championships. And then I left Oklahoma. I went to Nebraska, you're looking at the only guy that ever played at OU that coached at Oklahoma and Nebraska both. And
Is Tom Osborne still
yeah,
there?
Tom was the head football coach. I headed up his recruiting program and coached the receivers for Coach Osborne. Had a great experience with him. And then I left Nebraska, went to Texas A&M with Jackie Sherrill, and left Pittsburgh to come to A&M. And I was his assistant head coach, recruiting coordinator, and wide receiver coach for 3 years at A&M.
I think a lot of people will be surprised how much the recruiting process has changed since you entered college football as a teenager to where it is today. 'Cause back in your day, you could actually try players out, bring them in and bring them into practice and see what they look like. And of course today it's all digital and you've got all this video and you've got actual, I mean, young people are trying to sell their college football player and their family to universities. So it's almost gone complete 360.
Yes, it has. It's changed. Just like you say, Mick. It's completely different than it was when I was recruiting. In fact, this recruiting service that I have, in addition to Sooners Helping Sooners that Kent mentioned, I stay in touch with the recruiting process, and it's all on the internet. Look at highlights. It's controlled by social media. And if you're a 4-star or 5-star recruit, then people decide to recruit you. When I was in charge of recruiting, you had a lot more freedom to go to spend time with a high school player, his coach, his family. You found out more about the individual, not just his height, weight, and speed. And so it has changed a lot.
Yeah, and you must have some stories from the recruiting trail that people today would just find hard to imagine.
Yeah, they would.
Well, I don't want to get
When is that book coming out? That's what I want to know.
Well, my wife has told me for years that I need to write a book, but I tell her 90% of it have to be the name can't be divulged.
Well, you were involved when we were working together in the military. You were involved recruiting Jack Mildren, I think.
Yes.
Spending an awful lot of time. Forgotten where.
Abilene.
He's from Abilene Upper High School.
I
Right.
guess those were times when coaches would just perhaps just go camp out.
Well, actually, that's when Chuck Fairbanks was the head coach at Oklahoma, and Barry Switzer was the recruiter that spent the majority of the time with Jack. I was in charge of recruiting, so we all went to Abilene. We all watched Jack. We watched him play football. We watched him play basketball. We watched him run track, and he was the #1 high school football player in the country. And he decided to come to OU.
You had a few other coaches around trying to get him as well, I take it.
Oh yeah, I mean everybody tried, but back in those days, there were different recruiting rules with the Southwest Conference and the Big 8, and Southwest Conference had a limited number of contact opportunities to go see a player where the Big 8 didn't. So we really outworked Texas and SMU and Baylor, all the other schools that wanted Jack, because we were able to be there, and we were there almost every week.
Wow. Well, you then left and went to Northern Illinois as your first head coaching job. I remember when you did that, and we talked about that at the time.
Right.
Tell us about that experience.
Well, it was a great experience. I wanted to be a head football coach. And so I was able to go to Northern Illinois. I'd never been to DeKalb, Illinois in my life, but a guy named Bob Brigham was the athletic director, and I was recommended by a former Nebraska player that I'd gotten to know when I was coaching at Nebraska that was on the staff at Northern. And so I went there in 1984, stayed there for 6 years, ran the Wishbone offense in the Mid-American Conference, had a lot of success.
Yeah.
In fact, one day...
Set some records there, as I recall.
One day we played Fresno State. They were ranked 24th in the nation. They were leading the nation in defense against the rush, and we rushed for 733 yards against Fresno State. Beat them 73-18. And it was interesting. Jim Sweeney was the head football coach of Fresno State, and he walked up to me after the game, and he said, Jerry, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I thought I was in Norman, Oklahoma today. We're running the Wishbone offense up and down the field. So that was a lot of fun. We beat Kansas State twice, beat Wisconsin and Madison, which is the first time a Northern Illinois team had ever defeated a Big Ten team in the history of the school. So it was a great experience for me.
Of all the head coaches you coached under, from Wilkinson to McKenzie to Fairbanks to Switzer, whom did you rely on the most when you became a head coach? What images or what experiences did you lean back on and recall?
That's a great question, and in fact, I took a little bit of a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Coach Wilkinson had a tremendous influence on me in my coaching career. So did Jim McKenzie for a short period of time before Jim passed away. So did Chuck, but I think probably Barry Switzer had more influence on me than anybody because of his ability to recruit. And Coach Switzer has a personality that's infectious. He's got a memory that is incredible. He can remember things that I'd never even thought about years and years ago, but he was a tremendous recruiter in the home with the family, and he had a tremendous influence on me.
When you see a young man in person for the first time and you're kind of studying them, what are you looking for? Are you looking for quick feet? Are you looking for upper body strength? Are you trying to look at his build and see how it might progress under a proper weight program over a few years? What are you studying that the average person might not see?
Well, that's a great question too, and this is a personal opinion. I think there's a lot of people in college football that understand the game and can play call and put together, a practice schedule, but there's not very many that can look at a high school player and their potential and how much better they can be a year from now, 2 years from now. And I prided myself in being able to do that. And back in those days when I was on the road for Oklahoma, I was gone the majority of the time, so I watched hundreds and hundreds of high school players practice and play games. So I developed a knack of seeing a player and having a good feel for how much he was going to improve. And the thing I looked at more than anything, Mick, was his athleticism, not necessarily his height and weight and speed, because there's a lot of guys that can run fast, but they're not very athletic.
Right.
And so the guys that were really gifted athletes that could run, they could catch, they could throw, all those things were kind of the things that popped out to me first.
Well, Jerry, we got just a couple of seconds really before a break, but tell us how you went from Northern Illinois to Oregon State. Just briefly, we want to come back to it after the break.
Okay, well, actually the athletic director at Oregon State called Prentice Gott, who was a teammate of mine at Oklahoma, and he said he was looking for a new coach, and Prentice was the one that really opened the door for me at Oregon State.
Okay.
Jerry Pettibone is our guest today on The Verdict. We'll be right back after this.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative, and this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick, Cornett, and Kent Meyers, and our guest today is Jerry Pettibone.
Jerry, talk to us about your stint at Oregon State. I know that you had a successful run there. Talk about it.
Well, that was quite an experience for me too. Like, I'd never been to DeKalb, Illinois before. I'd never been to Corvallis, Oregon before. But Dutch Bachman was the athletic director at Oregon State, and he talked to Prentice Scott. Prentice recommended me. I went to interview, and they offered me the job. And I was there for 6 years, ran what we call the spread option at Oregon State, which was kind of a development of the wishbone offense into a double slot with more of a passing attack than a run, and really, really enjoyed it. It was a hard job. It was a good job, but it's very difficult to recruit the kind of players at Oregon State that you need to compete against the USCs and the Stanfords and the Washingtons of the world, and now Washington State with what Coach Leach has done there. But I enjoyed the 6 years I spent at Oregon State.
Well, you took them to the Rose Bowl, as I recall.
Well, we played in the Rose Bowl Stadium.
Yeah.
We didn't play in the Rose Bowl Classic. We actually beat UCLA, which is the first time Oregon State had beat UCLA in the Rose Bowl during the regular season.
Yeah.
And Terry Donahue was the head coach at UCLA. He walked up to me after the game, and because we ran the wishbone, we actually controlled the ball for almost 48 minutes of the game. And he walked up to me and he said, I love that stinking wishbone. If I ran it here in UCLA, in Los Angeles, they'd run me out of town. but that was a good victory for us.
Tell us about Sooners Helping Sooners, which I know is a cause you're committed to.
Yes, yeah. 4.5 years ago, a guy that I got to know really, really well when I was Coach Switzer's recruiting coordinator was a guy named Jakey Sandifer. Jakey was a running back at Oklahoma, and back in those days, alumni could help with the recruiting process. Jake had a plane. He lived in Abilene, Texas at the time. In fact, it was his plane that flew in Jack Mildren for his official visit. And so Jakey and I became friends, and then he helped former Oklahoma athletes, mainly football, to find jobs once they got out of school. And then he recruited Jay O'Neill and I, who Jay's my partner. He was part of the 47-game winning streak, was a quarterback at OU from Ada, into starting this nonprofit. We're a 501c3. Pam Kelleher, who worked for the athletic department with Kelvin Sampson and Billy Tubbs, is our executive assistant. And we've been helping former OU athletes in all sports, men and women, to find jobs now for the last 4.5 years.
Well, and you're the president, are you?
Yes, I am. I'm the president.
I know our show airs on Sunday morning of a special day for Sooners Helping Sooners. Tell us about that special day with Coach Mike Leach.
Well, we have two major fundraisers a year. One of them is the Barry Switzer Classic. It's a golf tournament that we have in October. It's the first Monday in October every year. This will be the 5th one that we have. And then this is what we call our spring event. And we've asked Mike Leach, who was at OU with Bob Stoops. He was only there for 1 year, but he was the one that wanted Josh Heupel to come to Oklahoma, and Josh led OU to the national championship in 2000. Well, we've asked Coach Leach to come back for this spring banquet. It's going to be the evening of Sunday, May the 19th at the Cowboy Hall of Fame.
My information about Mike Leach, I don't know him, never met him, but my information is that he's an excellent and very humorous speaker.
Yes, he is.
He will entertain the audience.
Yes, he will, and it's going to be a Q&A kind of thing. He's really not comfortable just standing up making a speech in front of a bunch of people, so we're going to have Mark Rogers, Coach Switzer's MC on Coach's Cabana, kind of do a Q&A with Coach Leach that evening.
Well, now, how if someone wants to attend, if they're watching this Sunday morning and want to go tonight to the event, how do they go about doing that?
Well, we're actually going to save maybe a table for somebody that comes at the 11th hour.
Okay.
It starts at 5:30. It's at the Cowboy Hall of Fame. they can just walk up to the registration desk and say that they heard about this on the verdict and would like to come. It's
And they'll get the verdict discount.
yeah, they will. $200 a seat discount. But that'd be great. It'd be great if somebody did show up because they saw us.
Well, these organizations can come and go pretty quickly, and yours has had some staying power. I know you're the president. Why did you decide to get involved in this? What got to your heart that made you decide to get involved in it?
Well, Oklahoma has my experience at OU has really been the biggest influence on my life. You know, getting the chance to play for Bud Wilkinson, the influence Coach Wilkinson had on me, and then coming back from the service and being able to be a graduate assistant for Jim McKenzie, and then freshman coach for and recruiting coordinator for Chuck Fairbanks, and then Coach Switzer. I met my wife at OU. I met the Lord at OU through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and so the athletic department of the University of Oklahoma has had a big influence on me.
Well, college football's changed a lot. Do you see any influence of the wishbone in today's game?
A little bit, you know, like Army. That's a great example. They had an 11-1 season last year. They won a bowl game. They run option football. All the academies do. The Naval Academy, West Point, of course, the Air Force Academy. They're all option oriented. When Paul Johnson was at Georgia Tech, he ran option football there. And it's interesting to see a lot of people are running the option play out of the shotgun now, which is, you know, the air raid offense that Mike Leach runs at Washington State, and they're starting to incorporate option football into it.
In the NFL even, you know,
Yes,
where they really never thought option football would wind up, and there's a lot of option football going on out there.
There is. I mean, it's not as much in the NFL because they protect the quarterback so much, so it's mainly passing, but they do, and Baker Mayfield has been doing that at Cleveland, which has helped them be successful.
Yeah.
You told us something off camera that I thought was a startling statistic about Mike Leach's influence on the current University of Oklahoma coaching staff. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, you know, one of the reasons why we wanted Coach Leach to come back is that starting with Lincoln Riley, the head football coach at Oklahoma, who coached for him at Texas Tech. There are 9 assistant coaches at OU right now that either coach for him at Tech or Washington State or both. So he's had a big influence on the current Oklahoma coaching staff.
Well, as you kind of look back over these decades in college football, are you still a fan? I mean, you know, now that you're not, you know, getting a paycheck and coaching, do you find yourself turning on the television when there's a big game or turning it off?
My wife accuses me of turning it on all the time. No, I mean, I love the game. I love Oklahoma football. I go to all the home games. I go to the Texas game in Dallas. And so I'm really proud of Lincoln Riley and the coaching staff that he's put together at OU, the success that he's had. So I'm definitely a big football fan.
So when you're watching a game on television, is the screen wide enough for you? Are they showing enough of the play and the setup, the formations, or would you wish they'd back up just a little bit so you could see a little bit more of the X's and O's pre-snap?
No, I think they show enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus they have the replays.
And they got cameras all over the place these days.
Yeah, and in fact, that's the best place to watch a game now.
Yeah.
It's really not in the stadium, it's watching on television.
I know Joe Castiglione doesn't want to hear that, but but you're not wrong. I mean, it's amazing the type of telecast that we've now become accustomed to.
I know.
Jerry, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jerry.
Good luck tonight at the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. Sooners Helping Sooners. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Kent and I'll have a final word and make it back.
It used to be okay in hospitals. It used to be okay in movie theaters. It was okay in classrooms, restaurants, and airplanes. But thanks to a greater understanding of the dangers, that's not okay anymore. So now that we know secondhand smoke causes lifelong health problems, why is it still okay to smoke with children in the car? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's get serious about protecting kids. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
I really think people are so unaware of the number of kids waiting just in Oklahoma. And I think if more people knew that those children were out there waiting, I think that just by the way we live our lives and the people we talk to, that maybe we can help encourage adoption from Oklahoma.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We're wrapping up the show with Jerry Pettibone.
Yes, been a friend of many, many years and a great guy, and he's doing wonderful things. He's always been successful wherever he's been, but doing this kind of virtual charity work for folks in trouble and in need is just a good way for him to cap off his career. He'll be very successful at it.
He's been an eyewitness to a lot of important things and a part of some really important things.
Indeed he has.
It was good to have him here, and he's hoping that you'll come to the National Cowboy Hall of Fame Sunday, May 19th. It's a special evening with Washington State coach Mike Leach on hand. It's Sooners Helping Sooners. That's going to do it for this week's show. Thanks for joining us here on The Verdict. For Kent Meyers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week.